Hey there, this is Amelia here. Welcome to Amelia's Crossdressing Story. Today we are going to share a story called Feminized Forcedly by Teddy. For more interesting and exclusive stories, please subscribe to my channel and support me at Patreon. It was the peak of summer vacation, and James Madison, along with his friends Kobe Bravo and Ryan, was feeling the effects of boredom. The midday July heat hung heavy in the air, and there wasn't a thing to do. They had already gone through all the new movies, hit up the parks, and played every video game they could think of. Being young teens without a car meant they were stuck at home with no escape. "We could mess with Mr. Steve again," Kobe suggested with a grin. "Too boring," Ryan replied with a roll of his eyes. "Plus, that old guy said if we set foot on his property again, he'd make us pay." James sighed, clearly uninterested. "What's even left to do around here? Stealing gnomes from people's front yards? It's so lame." Just then, his 12-year-old sister, Melina, walked into the house, heading straight for the kitchen. She didn't notice them at first as she rummaged for a snack. "Figures," Kobe muttered. "Your sister's already in there eating again." James shot a look at Kobe. "Didn't she just have lunch like an hour ago?" From the kitchen, Melina's voice came back, muffled but irritated. "Leave me alone. I'm not having a good day." The boys, in a sudden burst of energy born out of sheer boredom, jumped up from the couch and strolled into the kitchen. They had nothing better to do than to annoy her. As Melina grabbed a tub of ice cream, the mischievous trio couldn't resist. They snuck a pinch of salt into the ice cream when she wasn't looking. It wasn't long before Melina took a bite. "Why'd you do that?" she screamed, glaring at them. "You ruined it. Now I can't even eat it." Fuming, she stood up, clearly upset. "I hate you all. Why can't you just let me eat in peace?" As she stormed off, she muttered under her breath, "Just wait, you'll see." The boys couldn't help but burst into laughter, finding the whole thing hilarious. It was the most fun they'd had all day. But as the laughter died down, they were left with the lingering question, was it worth it? They returned to the living room, collapsed back onto the couch, and turned on the TV. Maybe the rest of the afternoon would bring something more exciting, or maybe it was time to just let boredom win for now. About an hour later, Kobe stood up from the couch. "I think I'm going to head home and grab my Joker movies so we can watch them here," he said. A chorus of enthusiastic okays came from the rest of the group. As his hand reached for the doorknob, a voice from behind him stopped him in his tracks. "Stop right there." Kobe froze, but he didn't intend to listen to Melina. He was about to shrug it off, but something about her tone made him turn around. She was standing there, holding a large, golden medallion shaped like a crescent moon. It was glowing faintly, emitting a soft red light. "Front and center," she commanded. Reluctantly, Kobe stepped back into the living room as the other boys followed him, their curiosity piqued. They stood in front of Melina, their eyes wide with confusion. "What's this about?" Kobe began, but he was quickly cut off by Melina's sharp tone. "No talking," she snapped, her eyes blazing with an intensity that left no room for argument. The room fell silent as Melina spoke again. "I told you all to stop earlier. Not one of you had the guts to listen, or even think about stopping. Well, now, for the rest of your lives, none of you will have the guts to do anything." The boys exchanged uneasy glances. "This," Melina held up the medallion, "is the Medal of Sorek. My grandma gave it to me when she passed. It gives me complete control over whoever I choose. It also grants me powers beyond anything you can imagine." A chill ran through the room. Melina's voice grew colder as she continued, "I'm going to get back at all of you. By the time I'm done, you won't even remember this conversation. You'll go back to your lives, finish your days like normal. But trust me, the real fun starts tomorrow." The boys stood frozen, the weight of her words sinking in. Melina spent the next hour detailing specific instructions for each of them, accompanied by a strange spell that seemed to resonate with the very air around them. The boys couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a game. Soon, one by one, they headed back to the living room except for Kobe, who left to grab his Joker movies. Simply. Melina walked back to her room, a satisfied smile tugging at her lips. The next few days are going to be so much fun, she thought. I'd better get some rest. The next morning, Bravo woke up, groggily stretched, and went about his usual routine. He showered, got dressed, and left his house to meet up with James. The plan was to head to a baseball game that afternoon. As he walked, a strange tightness settled in his stomach. It quickly escalated into a sharp pain, causing him to stop and sit on the curb. After a few moments, the pain faded, and he hurried on his way, eager to get to James's house. As he walked, he bumped into Kobe, who was sporting a pair of open-toed sandals, women's sandals, to be precise. Bravo glanced down and noticed that Kobe's toenails were painted a bright red. "Where did you get those shoes?" Bravo blurted out, his curiosity piqued. Kobe casually looked down at his footwear and shrugged. "Oh, I've had them for a while." "Thanks, man." Both boys exchanged confused and horrified glances before continuing on toward James's house. As they approached, they ran into Ryan, who was carrying shopping bags in both hands. "Hey, wait up!" Ryan called. "I just picked up some awesome outfits at the mall. I'm gonna change at James's." The boys nodded, and they all made their way to James's doorstep. When they arrived, James opened the door to greet them, and the boys froze. James was wearing makeup. They exchanged confused glances but said nothing. Ryan hurried past them and into the bathroom to change. The other three boys just sat in stunned silence, exchanging bewildered looks. A few moments later, Ryan emerged. He was dressed in a short, black skirt that flared out to his mid-thighs, a pair of gray tights, and a tight gray tank top that exposed his bra straps. His feet were clad in black platform sandals, and a ribbon was tied around his neck, completing the bizarre ensemble. James stared at Ryan, who was now sporting longer, blonde hair. "Wow, that's cute." "You look hot," he commented, his voice full of admiration. The other boys just watched in stunned silence, each of them secretly wishing they were either in James's or Ryan's shoes at that moment. As the awkward silence stretched on, the atmosphere in the room shifted, and the boys seemed to be caught in their own heads, wondering what exactly was happening. Just then, Melina walked into the room, and everything came to a halt. She looked at the boys, a sly smile spreading across her face. "Don't we all look ashamed? And might I add, pretty," she said before striding toward the kitchen. The boys exchanged nervous glances, still unsure about what was going on, but soon their focus shifted. They remembered the baseball game they were supposed to attend later that day. The rest of the afternoon went by without incident. At the game, however, they caught more than a few odd looks from other people. The next morning, the boys gathered once again at James's house, this time, for no particular reason. It was 11 a.m. when they arrived. James, to their surprise, now had a full head of brown hair, and his body seemed smaller, more delicate. Ryan arrived next, wearing tight-fitting pink spandex shorts, a matching top, and pink and white Nike Air tennis shoes. Kobe followed, wearing a pair of women's sandals once again, paired with white Daisy Dukes that exposed his legs. Bravo, on the other hand, looked exhausted. His clothes no longer fit him properly, his hips had widened, and his frame had noticeably shrunk. Ryan, beaming with excitement, gathered the group together. "Everyone, listen up," he exclaimed. "I talked to my parents last night, and they've agreed to let me get the gender change operation early. I leave for it tomorrow. Mom's already made all the arrangements. Isn't it awesome?" He was so caught up in his news that he didn't realize the weight of his words. The other boys stood in shock, but excitement quickly spread. They all congratulated Ryan, giving him hugs and expressing their support. The next morning, everyone, except Ryan, showed up at James's house by 10 a.m. Kobe was the first to arrive, dressed in a leather miniskirt, a tight halter top, and black boots that reached halfway up his calves. His bulge was evident through the skirt, but what struck the others the most were his smooth, hairless legs, which appeared almost feminine in their shape. James opened the door, wearing a sports bra that was clearly too tight for him and sweatpants that didn't fit quite right. Bravo, arriving soon after, seemed even more out of place. His clothes barely fit him anymore, and he was walking uncomfortably. His once short hair now cascaded down to his shoulders, adding to the strange transformation taking place. As the boys gathered in the living room, an eerie silence fell over the group. No one could quite bring themselves to speak about what was happening. The atmosphere was thick with confusion and unease. James finally broke the silence. "I just wish I didn't have to worry about my figure so much," he said, almost wistfully. Before the boys could even respond, James' body began to shift before their eyes. His height seemed to shrink slightly, and his hair shortened to just below his ears. The sports bra he was wearing reformed into a simple t-shirt, while his sweatpants expanded, growing a couple of sizes too large. He felt an uncomfortable shift deep within himself as his body continued to change. By the end of the transformation, a plump teenage girl sat in James's place. "That's better," James said, but internally, he was screaming. "I don't know." "June," Kobe began, "I kind of like keeping my figure. I just wish I could fill out my clothes more." The words were barely out of his mouth before he was struck with a searing pain in his chest. A burning sensation spread across his torso as he felt his chest shift, his feet going numb with a strange tingling. As his legs reshaped, his hips widened, and his chest began to swell. His arms shortened and became more slender, and a cascade of strawberry blonde hair fell to his shoulders. He looked down at his freshly painted nails, but before he could finish his thought, the pain became unbearable. A new discomfort surged through him, and his hips continued to grow, his bottom becoming more pronounced. "Well, Camilla," Bravo murmured, clearly uncomfortable, "at least you're comfortable now. I just wish I had clothes that fit me." As soon as Bravo spoke, his t-shirt tightened around his body, forming a fitted short-sleeve sweater that hugged his now womanly chest. His underwear shrank, and he felt a sudden tug at his hair. The pain intensified as his blonde locks were pulled back into a tight French braid. His shorts fused together, transforming into a short plaid skirt that barely reached his mid-thighs. His socks slid up his legs, stopping just above his knees. Bravo stared down at his watch as it seemed to shift, becoming more slender and delicate, perfectly matching his now feminized body. A sharp sensation traveled through him as his tennis shoes morphed, and in their place appeared a pair of multi-strapped high-heeled shoes. He couldn't help but look on in shock as his body continued to change. Then, he felt a cold gust of wind sweep over him, signaling that the final transformations were taking place. Bravo's bust began to expand as his waist cinched in, reshaping his body into a more feminine form. The wind died down, and he was able to breathe again, though he still felt the lingering effects of the changes. Just then, Melina entered the room from the kitchen, an unmistakable look of delight on her face as she watched the boys turned girls. "Well, Camilla, Bella, June, are you happy?" Melina asked with a grin. She snapped her fingers, and the three girls seemed to wake up from a haze, their expressions confused. "What did you do to us? Change us back!" June yelled, panic in her voice. Melina simply snapped her fingers again, silencing the room. "Be nice, girls. You're going to go through a lot in the next few weeks." She turned her attention to June first. "June, you're expecting your period, but it won't be coming. Instead, by the end of the day, you'll find yourself pregnant." She paused, watching June's eyes widen in shock. "Camilla, your period is coming too, but I won't tell you when. Be ready. And don't think you're out of the woods, because your girlfriend, Ryan, got lucky. She won't have to worry about it. She'll wake up right before her surgery, confused and wondering what's going on, but it will be too late for her to speak. She'll learn to live with it, especially with the support of wonderful friends like you." The girls looked at each other, their minds racing with disbelief. By the end of the day, Melina added, "You will all know what it's like to be a real, experienced girl." With that, Melina turned and walked out, leaving the girls in stunned silence. Bella started to speak but quickly stopped, her thoughts shifting in another direction. "Well, we'd better hurry to the mall," she said, trying to push the strangeness of the situation aside. I hear there's a sale at Miller's. We can't let any of the good-looking guys get away. The others stared at her, still in shock, before nodding in agreement. With that, the trio of girls left the room, each consumed by thoughts of shopping and flirting with guys, the remnants of their former selves screaming inside them. But it wouldn't be long before they fully adapted to their new lives, embracing their transformations. The future was a mystery, but they would soon grow to enjoy it. That's all for now. See you in the next video. For more interesting stories, please subscribe to our channel, and for exclusive content, please join us on Patreon. Link in the comment.